And I'm also, well, I'm going to start with one, but I'm going to roll it, right? So it's round. And we can also add a second layer, but I'm just going to take my blanket and roll it. Good, and put it off to the side for a moment. Let's just prep the body a tiny bit. Okay. All right, rolled up blanket to the side. Let's just move the body a tiny bit. So hands behind, maybe hands to the side, pointing fingers pointing to the side. Just a couple sweeps. Good, maybe head same direction as the knees. Good, and again, going slower, going fast is fun, but going slower sometimes lets you feel into what tissues are tight, and then taking the head in the opposite direction. The opposite direction. I insert extra words or say, my mouth doesn't always match what I'm thinking. Good, and then let's pause on one side. So this is my right side, the knee to the right, right knee in front. Just coming up to fit, extra blanket under you if you need to, but I'm going to tip towards the knees, towards the feet. And then tip away, just getting those side ribs. And play with breath. Play with breath, especially right in this side bend shape, either breathing more into the more open side of the rib cage or even the more closed or back side or front, just wherever, maybe even exploring how is the breath moving into different spaces. And then let's do a little rotation right away from the feet. Again, just pausing at end range and breathing, letting the breath, the movement of the lungs move the ribs. And then to the other side. And that first side again. Good, and second side. Good, and then coming to center, and I'm just going to take the back hip, the left hip, and just roll it, lift it and roll it to the right, and then set it back down, just getting a little movement at the hip joints, especially that kind of internally rotated leg. Good, maybe taking that left arm up, reaching up. And then maybe take that arm down, reach it under the other arm, almost like a thread the needle. Good, one more time, reaching up. And one more time, reaching down, almost under that other arm. And pause, and then we'll do one of these, we'll come back to it, but same thing we did on the chair. I'm gonna press hand behind me, pressing into both shins, feet, knees, letting the hips lift. Maybe even a little side bend, looking towards the floor or looking up to the ceiling. And then slowly down. And then let's shift up and over to the other side. Again, use blankets under you if you need to, tipping towards the knees. And away. And tipping towards. Again, playing with breath. And noticing the difference, right? This difference, this leg configuration as opposed to the other side. Definitely not the same for me. Turning away from the feet. And letting the breath come in and create movement, mid back, upper back, lower back. And other side. Good, and first side again. Good, and second side again. Good, coming towards center-ish. Back hip is going to lift and move to the other side and come down. So right hip lifts and turns to the left and comes down and lift and turn and come down. One more. Good, and then let's use that right arm, reaching up and back and coming back to center, and then reaching down and through, rounding the back, more flexion. And coming back, and then a little extension. Maybe less extension in the lower back, more in the upper. Good, and then flexion, maybe more in the lower and upper. Good. And then left hand down behind, pressing into knees and shins, sending the hips away. Again, maybe looking down to start a little more of a side bend. And then looking up a little bit more of a back bend. And lowering down. Good, and lifting the knees. Good. And let's just do a sweep to the one side, second side. Just a simple back leg. Now sweeps around, right? So big rotation. So listening. Back leg sweep and center. Back leg sweeps around the front leg and center. Good. One more each side. Good. Okay. Now that we've got the ribs nice and warmed up a little bit, let's take our blankie and bring the upper back onto the blankie. You can have your second blanket handy if the upper back doesn't easily let the head come back, then maybe have a little bit of height under the head, right? If your chin starts to lift and the back of the neck shortens, right? Either adjust where you are on the blanket. Right? We definitely have more flexible aspects of our spine and less flexible aspects. Good, knees bent, arms above the blanket. Again, that extra layer under your head if you need it. Just pause for a couple breaths here. Good, letting your breath fill, not just your front chest, but your upper back. Almost moving your breath back towards the blanket, into the blanket. And then let's take the hands behind the head, lift the head, interlace your fingers, with maybe even thumbs near the base of the skull, and just tractioning the head away from the pelvis. Good, let the elbows come in more parallel and then just gently roll the ribs up. Good, little posterior tilt in the pelvis. And then roll the ribs back. Good, and do that a couple times, and you may want to move, right? You may want to come up a little bit and then move either up or down so you have another place in your upper back where you can use the blanket as a fulcrum just to create a little more space or mobility. We tend to get a lot of tightness, especially around bra strap area. And especially up by base of neck, like bra strap, base of neck. Those are very common density points. Shimmy around a little bit and lifting, getting that flexion, posterior tilt in the pelvis, and extension, maybe even keeping a little of that posterior tilt in the pelvis. Good. And then finding a place, again, where you can bring your head back and arms out to the side. Take the feet a little wider and let's do a couple knee drops, just letting the knees tip to one side. And slowly center. And notice, right, maybe the head wants to move same direction as the knees. Good, and try that a couple times, and then maybe opposite direction to the knees. Good, and really noticing relationships of rotation, just what that brings in, rotation of the spine, brings in rotation of the ribs, the neck, the waist. Right? Most of us are asymmetrical in our spine and in our ribs. Just noticing what you notice, using your breath to create movement in the ribs, the ease in the ribs, or more responsiveness or openness, softness. Good, and then come back to center again. So let's take right arm. Well, let's take it up to the ceiling to start and reach it across to the left arm, right? And you may just touch the upper arm or even the shoulder, maybe the elbow. And then let's take that right arm and bring it maybe fingers to the floor. Maybe the arm bends, maybe the arm straightens, maybe it straightens, comes off the floor, but let it trace around the head and out to the right again. Good, left arm up to the ceiling and across to the right. Right ribs are going to roll a little, neck and head will roll. Adjust any height under your head if you need. And then again, you could bend the arm. Maybe the hand comes close to the head and you move more from the elbow. You reach more from the elbow, or arms straight. Could be on the floor, could be off the floor. Tracing around to the left. Right arm up and across. To the left, notice if there's a little more movement in the rib cage, in the shoulder as you sweep around. Left arm up and across. And the ribs might pull the pelvis a little into rotation. That's okay. Maybe not a full rotation. One more time to the right. Right arm up, or sorry, to the left, but right arm up, reaching to the left. Right, each time I do it, my body's a little more accepting, allowing, lets me go just a little bit further, left arm up and across, where it feels more available. And left arm around the head and out. Good, and then hands behind the head again, lift the head. I'm just gonna scoot away from or towards the feet, and then bringing my back to the ground and my head onto the blanket. So my head is tipped and a little bit of flexion. Good, arms out to the side, knees bent, and let's just do a couple knee drops here. You can let the head again roll a little, same direction as the knees. Or in opposite direction of the knees, maybe try both. And nice and slow, letting the head roll, ribs roll, pelvis roll. And back to center. Good. Just lift the head up, slide the blanket out. Just push it out. Good. Maybe even bring your blanket onto your hands, arms overhead. And sometimes having your arms on the floor is okay, and sometimes it's not. So you could always put your hands on top of the blanket if you need to. And just a couple more breaths here. Good. And then releasing. Good. Just extend your legs for a moment. Good. All right, let's bend knees. Again. Okay, arms out to the side. Good. I'm going to extend my left leg. So my right leg is going to be bent, my left leg is going to be straight, and I'm just going to press into that right foot and tip the pelvis to the left. And maybe even bring that right hand down towards the right foot and left arm up towards the head. So I'm doing a little sweep of the arms to the right. So I'm almost in a bridge tipped on my side. Hopefully getting a little opening in that front right thigh and hip. And then rolling back, arms back to where we started. Same thing. Press into the right foot, lift that right hip, tip the pelvis to the left, right hand down, left arm up, and center. Good, and then I'm going to press into that right foot, keep the arms where they are, and this time I'm going to take that right arm up towards the head and around the head, rolling onto my left hip and left shoulder. Good, and maybe even slide that right foot closer to the shoulder, closer to the hip. So I'm more in a little bit more of a kind of virasana or Natarajasana shape. Good, maybe you can even just reach that right hand away from the right foot as you crawl the foot a little higher. And then maybe just slide that right leg behind you down to that right corner of the room as you almost drag that right arm around the head and back out to the right. Good, other side, left knee bends. Press into that left foot, tip the pelvis to the right, left hand down, right arm up. So again, you get that little opening in the front of the left thigh. And engaging those left hamstrings. And then roll back onto the floor. Let's do that again. Press into that left foot. Sweep the arms to the left. And then come back to neutral. And then again, let's take left arm around the head as you press into that left foot. Right, and I'm keeping that left foot on the ground, keeping that left foot, maybe even walk the foot closer to the butt. That left arm reaches away from the foot. And then let that left foot slide behind you. Rolling the pelvis, the ribs onto their back, left arm back out to the left. Good, bending knees. Let's do a little anterior, posterior tilt. Anterior, posterior tilt. This time, scooping the hips up into a little bridge. And then slowly roll down. Again, anterior tilt, posterior tilt, and lift. Good. And pause here for a moment. So the ribs are still heavy, right? My ribs are tipped towards my pubis. And I'm going to let my right sitting bone tip towards the floor. So the left leg is trying to stay where it is. Right hip tips to the floor. And then the sitting bone lifts back up again. And then the left sitting bone tips towards the floor. And then lifts back up again. Right side again. Lower. Pelvis will turn to the right. And then right hip lifts back up. Left sitting bone drops. And then lifts back up. Let's lift the heels now. Again, try to lift the sitting bones more from the base of the buttocks so that lower back stays long. But keep the sitting bones lifted. Lower the heels again. And then slowly, slowly roll down. Let's turn the toes out a little bit, anterior tilt. So heels are in, toes are out. Posterior tilt, lifting the hips up. Right, so toes are out, knees are gonna follow the toes. Slowly roll the spine down, right? Upper ribs, mid ribs, lower ribs, upper lumbar, lower lumbar. Anterior tilt. Posterior tilt, dropping the waist back, top of the sacrum back, sitting bones lift. And up you come. Good. Maybe even here, drop right sitting bone down and lift. And left sitting bone down and lift. And then slowly, slowly lower. Good. Turn the toes in. So heels are wide, toes are in, anterior tilt, posterior tilt, and rolling up into a bridge. Slowly rolling down. Upper ribs, mid ribs, lower ribs, upper lumbar, lower lumbar, anterior tilt, posterior tilt, and sitting bones lift. Good. Let's do one here, right? Dropping right sitting bone down and lift. Good. And you can even use your hands, left sitting bone down and lift, because we often use our upper glutes, right, and lower back to do hip extension. And then slowly, lower down, right? It's just trying to touch into what are we using in our body. If the lower back hurts, we're using more lower back. Anterior tilt, posterior tilt. Okay. Feet together, knees apart. Baddha Konasana. Good. Let's press the feet into each other. And press both feet, outer feet into the floor. Good. Keep that little anterior tilt. Little posterior tilt. Keep pressing the feet into the floor and lift the sitting bones up. So now sitting bones are off the floor. Feet are in Baddha Konasana. And then slowly roll down, right? Find that articulation, finding that shape of getting the ribs down, waist down, upper sacrum down, and then release to your anterior tilt. And one more time, posteriorly tilting, tucking, feeling that waist come back to the floor, feeling the sitting bones lift, and then keep lifting from that place. Feet heavy into the floor. Good. Stay with the hips up, arms close to the body, and let's just tip the knees. Be just a little bit to one side than the other. Again, you can let the head roll with, just to keep the breath moving and some of the tension out of the jaw and diaphragm. And just feeling what's working, what's not working, and then coming back to center. Slow, 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 slow roll down. Good, and then knees up. And pause. Good, let's roll onto our sides. And come up to sit. All right, let us grab chair. And our blanket. And you can, again, either use, so I have, I'm obviously not using a sticky mat from a rug. But you can take your sticky mat and just fold it in quarters, right? Fold it in half and then half again. And put it over the edge of the chair. We did this. We're going to do it again. So blocks. Okay, so having blankets closer to the chair. I think we did it further away last time. Just going to take one knee. So my shin, and you can play with having the knee further out so the shin is less vertical and more at an oblique. And the other foot forward. Like right up there. Okay, so I am going to bring my hands back towards the chair, get close to the chair, and come upright. Maybe I need to pull back a little bit. I'm more upright and just a little rotation one direction. And then a little rotation other direction. Let's take the arms out. And almost trying to pull the pubis up towards the breastbone, arms up. Maybe even look up. And then hands come to the block. Let's walk that front foot forward and let the hips move towards the front foot. Again, sitting bones trying to move down and forward. And then back. Front leg straightens. Sitting bones down, hips move forward. You can even push into the chair. and moving back, front leg straightens. And again, moving hips forward and back. So I'm going to take both blocks to the inside of my straight leg. So as I bend, it's a little bit more of a groin, inner thigh, inner hamstring, inner quad. And straighten. Let's do that one more time. And straighten. Let's come back through center. Right, more center quad of that back leg. And straighten. And then maybe even hands on the outside. I'm getting more in the front leg. Maybe bend. Ooh. And straighten. This is the direction that we don't go usually. Even just straightening the front leg is challenging. And then bending it. Getting that back inner quad. And then neutral. And let's sit here with the hips forward a little bit, trying to walk the blocks back. So without taking the hips back, walk the blocks back under the shoulders. Let's take one arm up to the ceiling and look up. And hand down, other arm up. And down. Good, and release both legs. And come to sit. Okay. Other side. All right. Pulling my chair in. Again, make any accommodations that you need. Either chair further away. Right, so there's less verticality, just depends on what your body needs. Again, a little downward movement with the tailbone, a little upward movement with the pubis as I get closer to the chair. You can even play with a little bit of cat-cow. Little anterior tilt, posterior tilt. Let's take the arms out then, and up, looking up, keeping that posterior tilt. Good, and then hands forward. Foot forward, let's let the hips come towards the front foot. And then hips back, front leg straightens. And bend, sitting bones down, breastbone up. And then hips back. Sitting bones down and breastbone up. And leg back. Good, totally different on this side for me. Blocks on the inside of the straight leg. Again, bending. Just getting different tissues of front leg and back leg. Good, and straighten one more. Ah, feels so good. And then let's come back to center. Bending. Again, I'm pressing into the chair as I move forward. And back. And then hands on the outside of the straight leg. Good. Even that is just challenging for me. And then bending that front knee. Just a whole different area of that front quad in the back. Straightening and bending. And straightening and bending. It feels oddly good. And straighten, and then come back to more neutral. And pause here. Let's walk the hands back. The hands are close to hips. The hips are moving down and forward. Maybe take one arm up and look up. And then other arm up and look. Good. And then knees forward. Okay. All right. So again, so if you're on a sticky mat, maybe turning yourself so you're on your knees are on the sticky mat, your heel is on a sticky mat. but on the floor. Right, so if I start in this shape, right, with knees on something, doesn't really need to be long, and the other foot forward. Well, let's do it that way. Another way. I'm going to use my blocks, and I'm going to start more from a downward dog shape. So I am going to think about, again, heel coming onto something that can slide, possibly. So I'm going to step 1 foot forward just to the outside of the block and let the hips come low. And then maybe straighten the leg. And hips come low, low, low. And then step back to the downward dog shape, hands on block. And then other side, left foot, knee bends, hips come low. And then straighten that front leg. Bend the front leg, hips come low. And then step back to downward dog. Okay, so wherever your knees come down, that may be where your first blanket is. And then where your foot landed, maybe a second blanket, maybe. And you might not need it, but I'll show you where we're gonna go. So downward dog shape. This is all kind of loose, do what you can. I'm gonna step that right foot forward. And this depends on you, right? So I am using hands on block. I'm gonna lift my hips up a little bit, pull my hips back, straighten the front leg. And then I'm gonna slide that front leg out to the side. So it's not quite a straddle, but the back knee can come down onto the blanket. Right, it's a little bit off alignment straddle, front straddle, and then step back. And then left foot outside of the block. And again, I'm going to pull the hips back to straighten the front leg and then slide that leg out. Back leg coming down to the knee to the blanket, or knee can be off the floor. And then stepping back. One more time because it feels kind of good. Good knee bends. You can again let the hips come low just to prepare the back leg. Right, because it's more about the back front thigh, or as much about the back front thigh as it is about the front hamstring. And then second side. And low. And then straighten and then slide that leg out. And it can be more forward than out. And back. Good. And knees down. All right. 2 more things. So let's come to the chair. Okay. I think we did this on Wednesday. Oh, prop heavy. So I'm going to take knees bent, feet to the floor, right hand behind. Good. Right toes turn out, left toes turn in. Similar to what we did on the floor. Hips move away from the chair, and let's let the legs straighten. Do a little side bend over the chair, maybe looking to that hand, and then looking to the ceiling. A little bit more of a back bend. And then knees bend, and back to the chair. Other side, left hand down, and you can keep your knees bent if that feels more helpful. I think we did both. Good, left toes turn out, right toes turn in. Again, you can keep the knees bent and do more of a lunge or 2 straight legs. Again, more of a side bend. looking towards the chair and then turning away from the chair, a little more of a back bend. And then coming back to the chair. First side again. Again, could be lunge, side bend lungy, back bend lungy, or straight legs. Maybe play with both. Again, getting that posterior tilt in the pelvis and those front ribs dropping. Second side. Good. Front ribs towards the pubis, pubis lifted, lower back as long as you can get it. Side bend, back bend, straight leg or bent leg. Good. Your abdominals doing a kind of anti-back bend. Okay, and then let's come closer to a wall. And I'm going to take my sticky mat and put it over the back of the chair and possibly even a blankie. Again, if you have little nubs on the edge of your chair, just try to plant yourself in the middle or cushion up enough. And I am close to the wall, but a little distance away from the wall. Okay. Sitting on the edge of the chair. Getting close. So I am just going to put, remember where your blanket was when we laid on the floor. I want my blanket to be in the part of my back where it felt like I could arc over and bring my head back. So that same spot. So either hands on the seat of the chair to anchor the front legs of the chair, or your heels on the front edge of the chair. Maybe even just press hands down, feet down, and lift your hips up. Bridge pose, sitting bones up. Good. Pubis towards those front ribs towards the pubis. Maybe even head and hands. And finding that place in your upper back where you're where you can arc over the back of the chair, and then maybe let your hands guide your head back. Maybe even find your hands on the wall. You can play with letting your hips lower to the chair, getting more kind of that fulcrum feeling in your upper back, or lifting your hips and walking your hands down the chair. Maybe taking your hands wide as you arch over the chair. Maybe if the hands are wide enough, you can walk down. And then slowly release. Again, guide your head if you need to, but hips back to the chair. We'll do one more time. So if you need to be closer to the wall, further away from the wall. Good, maybe even just a little rotation. One side, other side. Tiny little flexion, again, just tipping pubis up to the ribs. And extension, flexion, and that anti-back bend. And releasing that. So keeping just that sense of containment, pubis to front ribs, heels onto the chair, upper back. Again, fine, we're looking for that place where we can arc over the chair. Good. You can even keep the hands on the chair to keep the chair heavy, so your heels are also on the front legs of the chair. Head can be in hands, right? Lengthening. Head away from sitting bones away from head, pubis towards chin, and then arcing over chair.
Again, you can play with that fulcrum of just lowering and lifting the hips with the head and the hands, or hands to the wall, hands wide, hands down. Right, using your hands to arc, finding your, almost your wheel pose on the wall. And then slowly, slowly release. Back up to sit. Let's just take right ankle onto that left knee and just a little bob, little tip. My spine is still pretty long. Just a slow tip forward. And those glutes had to work quite a bit, so just giving them a little length one side. And that foot down and the other foot up. And just that little tip forward. Good. Good. And that foot down. And let's come up to stand. And turn around. Let's bring hands to the chair. And step back, little kind of Uttanasana, downward dog shape. Good, maybe one hand. So one hand firmly on the chair, other hand towards the opposite ankle, just looking under that arm. And then other hand to the chair, pressing down onto the chair, and the opposite hand going to opposite leg. Both hands on the chair. Good, and just walking feet to the chair. Then maybe bringing forearms to the chair. You can either stack potatoes or hands, right? One potato, two potato, and put your forehead on your potato or on the backs of your hands. Or block if you need even more height. Good. And then bend your knees and let's slowly round up. Okay. And then let's just grab our blankies. So again, if you need to turn your chair, right? So if you have so we want to rest the legs on the chair. If you need to turn your chair so that your legs rest on the length of the chair or the feet of the chair. Good. And then I'm going to come down, but close to the chair legs, lifting the hips up. So depends on your body, length of leg, height of chair, and hips. So heels, backs of knees on the chair, or at least part of the ankle, backs of knees, hips on blankets. And once you're set up, just bringing your feet to the edge of the chair and letting just the weight of your thighs settle towards the pelvis for a few breaths. Letting the pelvis get heavy and almost widen the back of the pelvis. Widen the lower back. Widen those lower ribs. Just keep letting things settle and widen. Settle and widen.
Good, and then re-extend the legs, still aware of that weight through the pelvis. Lower back, mid back. And letting the chair hold the legs. Legs are very heavy. And letting that kind of separation, heaviness of the legs supported by the chair so that the pelvis can be heavy in its own way. Belly can be heavy and wide. Throat can be wide and soft. Back of neck can be heavy. Like that the body slowly starts to let go of all that effort and settle back into the floor. Back into the ground. Like gathering all of that vitality. That life force. Again, just aware of the light in the room and that quality of light. We still have these long days of light. And the moon is still light at night, still bright. And what it illuminates, what it reveals. And what it highlights and emboldens in us and asks us to change, to adjust. And just sense that sense of your own life force. And if you would like to stay here, please do so. Letting your body continue to settle. Giving yourself that permission. Namaste.